Alrighty. For today's podcast, we're going to be discussing mental health. And today's guest is Megan. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I came and said my name is Megan, and I'm in my second year of developmental service worker here at Transvaal College. And I guess my work experience, for you guys would know background, is that I have worked at a camp with kids, and then I am in my first placement, which is in a group home for people with disabilities. So that would be more information on background and such and like that.
Thank you for that introduction. I kind of want to tie into your introduction there a bit. The kids, you mentioned you work with kids. Just wondering, what age range do you work with?
So at the camp I work at, we will range from like age 5 all the way up until age 15-ish. That's when camp ends for that. And then we work with kids that are 16 to around 17 when they want to become leaders. So they're not full staff, but we're also working with them and being support for they can become leaders in the future.
Okay, so just to build on that, would it be safe to say that such a wide age gap, there's definitely going to be differences in how people view mental health in kids?
Yes, there's a wide variety because some people think younger kids don't have it, and then some people think older kids don't have it. So it all depends on background and all things like that. So yes, there's a wide variety on perceptives about mental health.
Um, so based on your experience, I'm just curious, have you seen like any differences in how mental health presents in kids, let's say for example, 5 or 6 years of age versus kids that are like 14 or 15?
Yes, there is some differences, but also I've seen the same in kids. So a lot of younger kids might just have anxiety about being away from home for the first time or being away from their parents for a couple hours. And then with older kids, they seem to like have more self-image issues, like not issues, but like self-image, like do I look good? Is this something that's good for me? Or like self-confidence too. So it's different, but also I've seen the exact same characteristics in the young kids and yeah, and the older kids.
Yeah, because I can remember when I was like a young kid, I went to camp myself for a summer, and I was definitely, even though I wasn't like in a 5 or 6 year range, I was definitely a bit homesick, you could say. Definitely, it's definitely an adjustment. It's definitely something that can be scary to kids and can sort of have that impact on mental health. Um, so that kind of wants me to lead this conversation to a different direction of do you think that there is in camps at least a positive or negative impact on mental health? Because I I think you can argue one way or the other.
I guess it can be good and bad, and this is coming from a camp counselor. I would love to say that camp is an amazing place for everyone, and it's amazing for that, but that's not always the case. So there's gonna be kids that go to camp and they're homesick, and then they get to the point that they don't want to be there, but their parents are forcing them to be there, so that can make their mental health drained. Or you see kids having fun, and you're not having fun, so you're like, why aren't I having fun? Is there something wrong with me? And then there's the opposite effect where kids come and they're struggling with their mental health, and they come, and they find their friends, they find who they are, and they find out that like you can be whoever you want to be at camp, and it helps with becoming better with the mental health.
So not only did I go to camp, I went to camp as like one of the few people there, if not the only person there who had autism and had like technically what's considered to be a disability, although I personally don't like that word because it implies that we're less abled. Um, but my main point is, do you think there's any additional barriers for those with a disability at camp? And if so, like how does that all play into the mental health and well-being of the kids there?
I guess there is sometimes with like what they like, there might not be things and sensory issues. There's a thing that at my camp that I really like is that we actually have one-on-one support counselors with them at all times if they need it. And then there's also the inclusion coordinator, which Fun fact, I am the inclusion coordinator this summer. So my job would be making sure those kids have everything they need, and then the counselors that are with them have everything they need. So there's no barrier of them coming to camp and them having the barriers of going to any activities they want. We'll figure out what works for them, what they want, and then we'll incorporate that into the summer camp for them.
Well, I just want to say congratulations on being made the inclusion coordinator. Do you think you could tell for the audience what that sort of entails? And
So
if it has any link to the topic today?
So it entails anything towards like people with disabilities or anything. So it doesn't have to be someone with a full disability. It could be someone that has even a mental health disorder. So they have really bad anxiety, they have really bad depression, and they don't want to be alone at all times, and they want to have a counselor there just to like chill with them. And then there is one-on-one counselors that be with people with autism, Down syndrome, all of that. And then it entails us because I also will be looking out for kids that have mental health disorders too. So I'll make sure they feel welcome, and I'll be incorporated if there's anything that they need help with as well.
That sort of shows that there's like a more widely available information on mental health, and that the conversation is expanding. I don't know. That's what it seems like to me. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, it's definitely expanding than what you would even see like 2 years ago. So it's definitely expanding.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that then. So if we take what happens at summer camp and sort of expand it to society as a whole, do you think society has a ways to go compared to like a summer camp?
I guess it all depends. So in some places, mental health is open and like there's a wide variety of like supports and there's no wait list and all that. But then you take, for example, someone that's in a college and wants to get mental health supports and the workload of the counselors, that person can't get help because it's like, well, you have to wait like 3 months to get help. So in some cases, there is a wide variety that they need to get like more education and more help. But then there's other places that have fully opened up and fully have had no wait lists and stuff like that.
Interesting. So you mentioned just a bit there about wait lists and stuff. I just want to comment on that it seems like our healthcare system, according to like some research I've done, is that people find it broken. People find that mental health services, the backlog for getting some of those services are way too long. In fact, I on the street had a conversation with people trying to expand mental health services at a hospital in Toronto because the wait times were up to 6 to 12 months to get mental health services in Toronto. In a city like Toronto, you expect wait times to be a bit higher, but that's because it's a bigger city, more bureaucracy, sort of, a bit of overlap of governments and stuff with our free healthcare. So that just that kind of ties into this because it's sort of like it seems like people aren't getting what they need in time, and I really haven't heard a solution to that problem. Do you have a solution yourself for that problem?
I guess the only solution I could think of, which it might be a hard thing to do, is hire more counselors and also have them with less clients so that they don't get the burnout. So, for example, there's counselors that have like 10 people and then they get the burnout, so then they can't handle it anymore and have to drop all the clients. And then also just like maybe educating people on mental health. So, for example, mental health first aid is one of the ones that you can do. And then they can direct you to get the help. They can't do like be a professional counselor, but they can help find ways to do it. And I also recommend anyone to get their mental health first aid. I have it personally, and it was a great experience to take it. And then you can be like, okay, well, you're struggling, so there is a group session here, there is hotlines here, there's apps here. So all those kind of things can maybe help lower the risks of mental health going up higher.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to try and be more specific here. There's a given example of, let's say, trigger warnings, where you give a warning about something that might be offensive to someone or trigger their mental health issues. Now, there have been some arguments from experts that have said that this doesn't really help the person move on from the trauma because it really just spikes up the trauma again. It just says, oh, there's going to be trauma here, avoid it. It's an avoidance tactic rather than a confrontational tactic where you actually take it on heads on and try to cope through it. Now, I can't specifically cite anything, but I do remember coming across articles on this that said that there were scholarly articles on this that said trigger warnings could potentially be detrimental to healthcare recovery. Now, I sort of want to direct the conversation towards that because I kind of think when we're doing our advocacy, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're sort of looking at some of those offensive things in a different light than what those studies might be looking at. And so what's your kind of thoughts on that?
So, yes, a trigger warning is always helpful to have, but also like for someone that's going through something in the moment, it might not be helpful to hear things going on. But someone that has something that happened and then they hear more stories of people could actually be a good thing because like, oh, I'm not alone. This has happened to somebody else. I can talk to this person about my experience because they know how I'm going through. So there is the good side, and if they have just recently gone through it, it can be something traumatic. So it's always good to give a trigger warning. So for example, I'm in another youth advisory council for mental health and addictions, and we are doing a doco series, which is basically like a podcast, but these people are giving their real life experiences on their mental health and stuff. And we always give a trigger warning because we don't want someone to just go into it that's struggling with that thing. So they like trigger warning that they might be like this kind of context, but it's always good to get that. But you don't want someone to not go through life and not hear about this specific thing because it might be out in the public and it might not be a trigger warning, and then that can put them back into that spot. So exposing them a little bit to the traumatic stuff, like a little bit more, not like right in a week, but like gradually going on can maybe help them come through it because then they know they're not alone.
So I'd say what I'm gathering from what you're saying is like you half agree with this experts and you half disagree because the experts are trying to say it's not like a half measure. It's like we need to stop these trigger warnings now because they're detrimental. So like I'd say you're half and half on it.
Yeah, because it depends on who the person is, when the thing happened, and what the topic is as well. So it's like I believe in it, but also like you always want to give it to them because then they're aware of it as well.
I kind of want to redirect the conversation. Maybe something a less a bit less controversial, but still an important topic is sort of like the future of mental health. Like if we look now, it's like 2023. If we look at 2033, what do you think mental health could look like down the road?
I believe since we have all these kind of advocacy, so for example, our group Reaction for Inclusion and my other group that is all about mental health and addictions, if we start spreading more awareness and getting more awareness out there, and then getting more groups to spread awareness and all that, I believe there could be an uprise of actual more help and uprise on like mental health going down and not coming up. And hopefully by that time we won't have all the things that's causing all these. So like one thing that is causing mental health is people getting out of the community more. So hopefully by then we won't have this COVID and we'll have more things opened up and more people educated on it to get help.
Yeah, I kind of see like the 10 years down the road as we can either go down a path of we're less open to mental health, we're less open about these difficult conversations, or we go down the route where we're open about this. We go down the route where yes, we may have to warn some people in some situations about certain things, but we're more open about it. We're more transparent about letting things not be censored. We're more transparent about talking and talking things out. And So my kind of thing is I think that when we talk about mental health, we need to have that more openness. And I'm sort of seeing myself that we're not having that openness in the sense that people want to close the conversation rather than open it. And I I kind of see that in society. I'm frustrated by it because I try to be more open about the fact that I've suffered from depression and anxiety, that I've been diagnosed with it. I'm currently on medication to deal with it. And so, like, some people are like, yeah, we can be more open about this. This is great. But some people are like, stop posting about that. You're going to trigger someone. So it's sort of like, should I stop being open about that?
I think you should be open about it because if you're not open about it, then, like I said, 10 years down the road, it's not going to be open. People are going to be closed in. They're going to be struggling, but they're not going to know how to get the help. So when someone posts something, and yes, it might be triggering, but that could be them spreading awareness, but also that could be them asking for help in a certain way, but don't know how to ask for help. So you have to be open. Yes, you do have to be careful on what you post. Like don't post graphic pictures and all that. But it's good to be open, so spreading awareness and spreading like posters and like spreading advocacy things that we're doing, or spreading advocacy that other groups are doing, and being open about it, but being a little cautious about what you post. So don't post anything too graphic, but being open at the same time.
I'm kind of wondering what we can do to sort of, improve that. Like how can we make things more open while also doing the great work of inclusion?
I guess for starters, this podcast is good because we're showing that yes, we care about this, and yes, we want to make a difference. And then also not only talking with the youth advisory council about what we want to do, but also having a conversation with everyone as a whole and being like, yes, this might be a conversation that might be a little bit like hard for somebody, but we can't do advocacy without that kind of conversation going out. So we might post something with statistics, and that might be hard on somebody, but posting statistics is one of the best ways that people can be like, oh, people are actually struggling, and oh, this is what we can do. So, yes, we want to be careful again, but also posting things as well, because then there's more about awareness and more people coming to terms about we are actually struggling, and it's actually youth and adults struggling as well.
I kind of see that the Yak should empower people to speak their stories because overall we're kind of seeing that when people open up more people get that help that they need, and more people are going to have those conversations like we're having and open up more and see those counselors. So do you have anything to add to that? Am I on the wrong road?
No, you're definitely on the right path because, like, if we're sheltering the conversations, if we're making people tiptoe with this struggling, then one, they're not going to get the help, and two, other people are not going to see it. So then they're going to think mental health is not the type of thing that is the new norm, because mental health is uprising not only because of COVID, but people in class for the first time in college, for example, people have social media. Social media is a big one. So, like, if we tiptoe all around, then it won't be an advocacy and it won't be people empowered to be like, I'm actually struggling or you're struggling. We need to get the help.
Yeah, so to tie this all back into like what we talked about earlier, what we talked about having difficult conversations, there are those who say like children cannot make decisions about the mental health because they're too young to make decisions on their own. Like there are people who are saying that. There's an entire movement of people trying to sort of encroach on that. Like it's sort of like protect the children. It's sort of like well, we're having these mental health issues. Like as you mentioned earlier, kids are having mental health issues still. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yes.
so it's sort of like people are saying that children cannot tell what they have and they cannot decide what they want, so we must protect them. But at the same time, there's people that are saying empower the youth to have a voice, empower the youth to make decisions. And it's sort of that dichotomy within our society at the moment. So it's sort of like a tug of war from what I can see. I don't know. I don't know how to unpack that. Like it's such a big issue. Um, I guess it's like who should be making those sort of decisions for children?
I think that the child should be able to make the decision, and but with a little bit of help, obviously, because like children have autonomy, children have the dignity to be able to have the privacy and all that kind of thing. But it's always good to have someone there for it, they can help make the decision, so the child can be like, I'm struggling, but I don't think I need the help. So an adult can be like, if you're struggling, I advise you, I recommend that you get the help, but not pushing unless that child is unsafe.
And so some would say like the adult's protecting the child in that case. And in the inverse, some people say, well, if the child says they need help, but the parent doesn't give them help, that's still protecting the child. You know, sort of like controlling what help the child gets. That's sort of like the difficulty there, I guess, with mental health. It's like it's a difficult issue, but I think it's an important one to have because it's sort of like okay, we consider adults like fully developed brains and children not fully developed brains. And it's sort of like at the same time, we want youth to have a voice with mental health and we want like children to make their own decisions. Like at least in some people's views. I'm not saying everyone's views. And it's sort of it sort of starts that tug of war. Like that sort of analogy of everyone pulling at different sides and having different perspectives. And it sort of loses the core of the topic of mental health and helping the child. What's best for the child? What's the best treatment? And people have their different opinions, including the experts, and it just sort of gets complicated. So I know we can't fully unpack it, but do you think there's a way to unpack that, or like could you unpack that for us right now?
I mean, there is small talks we could have. I probably cannot
Yeah,
unpack the whole situation because
yeah,
there's parents that are good, these parents that don't think, and then there's the
yeah.
teachers and everything. But one way is doing like empowering us to actually tell parents to tell like anyone that's telling kids that they don't have a voice about their own mental health struggles that they actually do, because they obviously know their own feelings. They know that they're sad, they know that they're upset, they know that they're angry, and they actually know when they're like, oh, I'm more sad than normal, I'm more angry than normal most times.
Mhm,
So having a conversation with parents and all of that, the kids actually know their feelings. They may
mhm,
not know the diagnosis that they have or anything like that, but they know
mhm,
the common like sad, angry, happy kind of
mhm.
feelings.
Okay, that's I think that's that sort of wraps up the conversation beautifully because we've gone over like all the tough things, we've unpacked it. So I'd like to thank you for being on this podcast, having these difficult conversations and sort of trudging forward on this. And I'm just I'm glad we were able to have this conversation.
Yeah, same. Thanks for having me.